talk some LSU football. It is that time of the week. Preston Guy, Tigerbait.com jumps aboard. Preston, how are you?
All right, what's going on, man? Thank you for talking to me on your day of hopping out under the tent and buying $15 cleats or whatever.
There's incredible deals here to be had. So hopefully a lot of folks will cash in on that over the next 24 hours or so. I want to talk some quarterback play with you here, Preston, and we've got to start obviously with Garrett Nussmeier. How would you categorize his play as a whole last season?
Oh, that's a good question. Overall, good, but I feel like that's not quite captures it. It was too volatile at times, right? He made some outstanding plays last year, showed you flashes of greatness, but there were also other times where he was too uncareful with the ball, particularly down the stretch of the season. I think in his first 6 games, I believe he only had 2 interceptions. So to finish the back half of the season with 10, that's highly concerning, particularly 3 against Texas A&M. There were also times last year where he was not good on the deep ball. In fact, I'll say times it wasn't until the very end of the year that he really started to hit that deep ball. And there were open receivers, granted, not the best deep threats in the world. That should be greatly improved this year. But you need to show some accuracy and consistency with that deep ball. So, I mean, overall, it was a pretty good season last year, but I'm not going to go out and say it was great or anything, but I think he's got the potential to be great.
How do you feel about his possibility of reaching that potential?
Well, he should have most of the tools in place. The one concern I would have is offensive line, because he's not going to be a guy who is buying you a ton of time with his legs and getting crafty with how he works the pocket. I mean, he's got mobility, but it's just average mobility. He's no Joe Burrow. He's certainly no Jaden Daniels. So that would be my one concern. But in terms of his receiving core and running back room, I think he's in pretty good shape. And with the offensive line, in terms of how many guys can be good, I mean, I think you've got a full 2 deep who you could convince me if he ends up the starter, like, okay, he's got a chance to be a pretty good SEC starter. So I do like the pieces he has in place here. And we all know about how that 5th-year bump at LSU has gone in recent years.
That's my next question. I mean, if you look at Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels, you see one story. If you look at the odds to win the Heisman Trophy, Garrett Nussmeier's always in the top 3. I mean, how surprised would you be if he was in New York?
New York wouldn't catch me off guard. Now, him actually winning the whole thing, I'd still be a little, I mean, imagine catching lightning in a bottle like that 3 times. I mean, most programs, you get a 5th-year bump like we saw out of Mettenberger in 2013, and they're ecstatic. I mean, when Mettenberger took that jump, LSU fans thought that was the rocket age. That was the greatest thing that could ever happen. And then Joe Burrow comes around, and then 4 years later, basically the same thing, the same level of offense comes again to LSU after a year of not so great on offense. So I think you got to manage your expectations. I think it's certainly plausible he'll be in New York, and he's certainly going to get some pretty good Heisman odds coming into the season. Don't be surprised if he's in the top 5 Heisman odds. I've even seen him as high as number 2. But, I think to put that expectation on him, that's such a high bar to hit. So you mean to tell me if he doesn't make it to New York, it's a disappointing season? Like, I don't really see that being reasonable.
I agree completely. I think that if you're trying to make him exactly into Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels, that's a lot to ask, especially when you consider what those guys are doing now on Sundays. What's more important to LSU's offense, the development of the running game or Garrett Nussmeier taking another step or 2 forward?
Running game for sure. For sure. Here's the deal. Nussmeier played well enough last year. I think that it's possible you could have won a national championship with the way he played last year. Now, granted, that's in this new era where you can lose 2 games and make the college football playoff too and then go get hot, because there were games he didn't play well enough to win that game. Certainly against Texas A&M, he didn't play well enough to win that football game. So, but if his running game were more consistent last year, that offense would have taken off and been a lot more consistent, because he threw for 4,000 yards. I mean, he was certainly moving the ball with his right arm, but I think that the surrounding cast around him, he had no running game at times. And at times his receivers were either hurt or, not being very effective, and that held him back quite a bit. So I think if you were able to develop a running game and you could get exactly what you got out of Nussmeier last year, I think you've got a pretty good offense right there. And certainly one that's good enough to win a championship with the right defense.
Here's an April question for you if we're just going to live in hypothetical land. If I let you make a one-for-one trade at quarterback and you could trade Garrett Nussmeier for anybody in the SEC, would you do it? I think your options are probably DJ Lagway, Arch Manning, Lenoris Sellers, Nico. I mean, would you make a trade if I let you do it?
Probably not. I mean, certainly once you account for the whole getting chemistry with the team and stuff like that, I don't think that there's a guy I would take over Nussmeier. And even if you ask me nationwide, I'm not sure I could come up with a guy that I'm for sure would be better than Nussmeier. Particularly, I've talked to people in the space of trying to, people who were responsible for helping Nussmeier come back to school this year. And there were people concerned he might go pro this year. And basically what I'm hearing from early draft projections is there's some NFL scouts who feel he's as high as the number 2 quarterback in this year's draft. And that's pretty impressive, especially when you start looking at these Heisman odds and, who these projected draft boards. A lot of these guys have Arch Manning ahead of him. And look, I have nothing against Arch Manning, but we've seen him start 2 football games. One, he looked very average, middle of the road in. The other, he looked good. And I think he's a good quarterback. I just don't know if I don't know if I'm ready to declare him Peyton Manning quite yet. Especially having seen him in high school, and the stuff he had didn't look, that overwhelmingly great to me from seeing him on the sideline. I mean, solid player, top 12 quarterback in the class, but I just didn't see number 1, top recruit of all time.
We'll see. A lot of stuff on his shoulders there in Austin this coming football season. Lastly, here on the quarterback front, Michael Van Buren. How would you feel if he needed to start 2 games for LSU? I realize it depends on which ones they are, but just in theory.
Yeah, I mean, on paper coming in, great, because we're talking about a guy with starting SEC experience. I'm a little concerned about the reps I've seen from the quarterbacks this spring, and that's not limited to Van Buren, but also Nussmeier at times has struggled during spring. So I kind of want to chop it up to, okay, well, maybe that was a windy day, or maybe they're learning here or there, and also chop it up to we haven't gotten the best look at the team. They've really kind of limited us to very few ones-on-one, full speed drills. It's been more like, one-on-one drills with the receivers and corners going out there, or 7-on-7 type stuff. So overall, I'd love to answer this question, not next Friday, but the Friday after that, after we get a good open practice. Let's see if they give us some good reps to see in that open practice. It might be less than we even get in the spring game. It could be more, but overall, I would feel 10 times more comfortable if I saw more live action reps, 11-on-11, ones-on-one with Michael Van Buren in there, and show me what he can do.
We'll certainly preview that next week when we talk at this time. I know y'all got a lot going on at Tigerbait.com right now as spring comes to a close. Let them know where they can find it all.
Oh, yeah. Look, guys, just check it out, Tigerbait.com. That'll have a link to our YouTube page. We got, our baseball show is still rocking and rolling. We got Kendall Rogers and Mike Scarborough doing their thing once a week. That's good content. Baseball team continues to look pretty good this year. Cade Anderson, boy, can't say enough about him last night, right? So y'all come check us out, Tigerbait.com. Anything we do anywhere else, like YouTube or whatever, we're going to post that on our Tigerbait feed. So that's always a good place to just kind of get your Rolodex of where to find us.
We appreciate the help every Friday. Have a great weekend. We'll talk next week for the spring practice.
See you soon, Hunt.
Preston Guy, Tigerbait.com. I think the point, and this is something that I'll probably harp on a good bit in July and certainly in August, like, I have some questions with LSU's roster entering this 2025 season. There are some things that I kind of look at and go, quarterback's not one. And that's a really good place to start. There is so much turnover, so much upheaval, so much change in college football rosters year over year at this point. And that's the coach's job to kind of mesh that all together. And when you can start with, by pretty much every account's top 5 quarterback in the country, I don't think that's a stretch to call Garrett Nussmeier a top 5 returning quarterback in the country. When you can start there, it's a pretty good place to start, right? And that's going to be kind of the thing that I feel good about as we start to climb towards this football season in the fall. Yeah, I wish I knew more about the DBs. I wish I knew more about the defensive tackles. I wish I knew more about what the offensive line was going to look like. I wish I knew more about how they're going to run the ball. But there's a comfort in looking at the quarterback spot and going, we're pretty good there. And that's where LSU sits right this very second. So that's kind of where I am. That's our look at LSU football here for this day.
Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.